session, and I'm very glad to be here listening to all of you. Some of you I've seen in other forums, and most of you have not. And I'm still trying to understand about God and soul, the topic that was discussed by Maharaj. So, especially Subha, you said the universe exists because I am, because I exist. And at the same time, we know that, at least we are told that soul is eternal, it doesn't die. And Maharaj talked about devoting this one life to Krishna. Now, very often, at least me and my friends believe this is the only life we have. This is the only one chance you have. Make the most of it. Go the farthest you can. Achieve as much as you can, materialism, in terms of money, in terms of fame, or whatever. So how do you reconcile with the fact that this is the only life you have and the soul is eternal? So, isn't there an inherent conflict in that?
Let us consider the nature of the body. What you're actually saying is that this body, this life is everything, and there is nothing beyond that. To address that question, let us consider there was a time when we had a small little baby body. Then the body became a boy's body, a young man's body, or a young woman's body. And then gradually this body will turn into an old body. So although the body is changing, do we change? Like you, when you're 5 years old, and you today, although you have a different body altogether, the 5-year-old body is not there anymore. Although the body has changed, but are you the same person or not? What's your answer?
My personal answer is that I have changed a lot.
No, your mind may have changed, your body may have changed, but did you change? Aren't you the same person?
I would think so, but I've discovered myself.
No, just answer the question simply. So what's your name?
Rahul.
Rahul, 5 years old, and Rahul today is the same Rahul?
Yes.
Right. So who is that? Is that the body, or is that someone else?
The body has changed.
The body has changed, but you did. So this is indicating that in spite of the change of the body, we do not change, and that we are the soul. The soul's presence in the body makes the body alive. And when the soul leaves the body becomes dead. So the death and birth is in relation to the body. When the soul accepts a new body, it's called birth. When the soul leaves the old body, it's called death. The birth of the body, death of the body. Due to the presence of the soul, the body made of matter, dead matter, is alive. So body dies, but the soul continues. So that indicates that there is a transmigration of the soul. Just as from childhood to boyhood to youth, the body changed. Similarly, when we give up the old body, we take up a new body. And the soul is our real identity. And as Mr. Subha was telling, that it is because me, the soul, being present, which is the source of consciousness, I am aware of this reality. Thank you.
I think I got the meaning of me now better.
Thank you.
So my name is Sanjoy. Since all of us are many of us from the corporate world, my question is, just like in a company, there is a group of people who will spend 20 years building up a company from grassroots. Then comes one person with $100 million check, buys the company and breaks it into pieces. So while we talk about spiritual leadership, my question is that we're all trying to do it organically, grassroots, one by one, individual by individual. How do you balance the fact that in this world, the rapid, political leadership, the corporate leadership has got all the, not so good ethics, which can rapidly deteriorate things? How do you balance that? That while you are doing this organically, taking decades and decades, the negative things, the negative karma is happening so rapidly, then the world can end before we can do something meaningful.
I think it's about, Sanjay, the way I perceive this is that just slightly different way, and let me try and explain this. We often look, because of our training and because of, I would say, training of the thought process and our education system in the corporate world, for the corporate world, we look for a question to be answered instantly. We look for an action to give us a result instantly. But when we look at certain other perspectives, so when I just want to quote a line from Upadesha Sara of Bhagavan Ramana, and he says, Kartur Ajnaya Praptaye Phalam Karma Kimparam Karma Tajjadam. So he says that in the Kartur, the God's Ajna, is when you will get the result or phalam. Karma by itself is inert. However, karma is a necessary condition for the result, but not a sufficient condition for the result. So coming back to specifically the question that you asked, and I want to quote one more from Yoga Sutra, is either you can process this whole thing through 8 limbs, or you can process this through tapas, swadhyaya, or Ishvara pranidhana, which means that is actually a nuclear bomb. It is a way to just completely get rid of all that you're trying to process layer by layer. Is to do by tapas, which is you regard this, what you're doing, as a penance. And you serve, and self-study helps you to serve the universe. Now coming back to, is this possible to do this person by person before the world self-destructs? The theory behind this is a person like Maharaj has an impact on millions of people. The person that all of us are in the room, by our thought process, can impact thousands of people. A person by himself, who are not yet in the room, but just by thinking right, can impact hundreds of people. And therefore, we should not underestimate the impact that all of us can have in the collective thought process and consciousness of this planet and of humanity. And therefore of the corporate world.
Sanjoy? Any other questions?
My name is Supriya. Just a follow-on question to that. Arthur C. Clarke, I think it was, who first mentioned in the 60s about collective consciousness and the envelope of human consciousness. It's like in the ocean you see the different islands, but there's a substrate in the bottom of the ocean and it's connected. Now, Swamiji talked about the fact that the human life is very, very rare to achieve. But on the one hand, you're seeing population explosion. So can we say that collective human consciousness and the collective wisdom has actually led to greater and greater beings taken a human form on the one side? But on the other side, there's so much going on that really worries us as corporate leaders as well as citizens. Whether it's global warming or it's the events that have happened in Paris or it's sheer irresponsibility of oil at the price it is today and pumping out billions and billions of oil, thinking, who cares? Let's just supply and see what happens. So how much ever we put in a tax on consumption, how much ever we care about reducing consumption, on the other hand, there are people in power and responsibility who have no responsibility. So it is worrying when you're in that position of seeing what's happening, and it's difficult to go inward and then go back into corporate life and worry about these things. So just that question.
It's a legitimate worry. However, I don't work in the corporate world anymore, and I think I have glad tidings. No, really, I mean, to actually go back to the earlier question and to relate it to this, I moved out of the corporate world not really throughout my choice, through accidents of my life. And at that moment, it seemed like a calamity, but it really was not. And now that I'm working with children and I'm working with younger people across the world, I see a lot of hope. You know, people say that, oh, the younger generation is terrible. No, actually not. I think younger people are learning more and more. They have access to so much information. They are not insular. There is a hunger to connect with people across the globe, which is wonderful. And there is a real desire to build a better world. And I see a lot of hope in that. So we may have a generation of leaders right now who may have worked with, you know, fearful ideas from the past, and that's kind of a natural generation of what came before this. But I see a lot of hope in the young people who are definitely focused on the environment. They are focused on building global communities, focused on, as Rajiv mentioned, and I see a lot of young people building models of social entrepreneurship, you know, working with a greater purpose. You're hearing of young people rejecting traditional careers and going into work of service at a very young age. So I think there's a lot of hope.
Supriya, just to add, the way this came to me is that as a collective consciousness, we become, over a period of time, a lot more rajas, a lot more yang. And many of those descriptions of what you said is what a person who's a rajas person would be doing. Doing more of the same, but not knowing it's a short-term result, but it's going to cause long-term pain. And what Sumita just mentioned is, I think there is a balance coming back into sattva, into more balance of the yin, which is coming through the collective consciousness, saying that if I continue to be so rajas, I will self-destruct. So I need as a consciousness, this consciousness arising, and that's why all of us are here, that we need to bring this back and bring more sattva into our consciousness.
I just want to add, because he brought in the beautiful idea of the yin and yang. Collective consciousness was actually floated by Carl Jung, and he did talk about the duality. So, you know, these ideas have been there, and now they kind of, we are seeing them in practice, even though people aren't talking about it in that language, but we're definitely seeing that in practice today a lot more.
Namaskar Swamiji. Hello everyone else. My name is Siddhi. My question is, what is the meaning and difference of consciousness and soul?
If you take fire and light, a spark of fire, light coming out, so soul is the fire and the consciousness is the light that's coming out of it. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
See, the point is, the consciousness comes from the soul. Wherever there is soul, there is consciousness. But the consciousness can be of different state. Like, say, for example, there are souls in trees and plants, but their consciousness is covered. Their consciousness in insects and worms and birds and reptiles and animals. Their consciousness is in shrunken state. Whereas the human consciousness is considered to be in a bud state. Apparently, a bud is in a shrunken state, but the bud has the ability to bloom. So only the human beings have that faculty, the prerogative of expanding this consciousness, which other entities do not have. And that's why the human birth is considered to be so special. Now, just as a bud, in order to bloom, needs exposure to the sun under the shelter of the water, similarly, a human consciousness begins to bloom when it is exposed to the Supreme Personality of Godhead under the guidance of a qualified teacher.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj and Guru of esteemed panelists for excellent presentation. My question is that we all spoke about consciousness leadership in the context of the Vedic literature and Vedic culture. Now, my question is to Guru Maharaj is that how could we practically apply this, being professionals and corporate leaders in our daily lives, so that it can improve ourselves and the corporates that we lead? Thank you very much.
As I just mentioned, if it's a matter of consciousness, then the development of consciousness takes place under the proper guidance of a qualified teacher. Just as to learn any subject, we need a teacher. Even to learn the alphabets, we needed a teacher. On our own, we couldn't even learn the alphabets. But when we get the proper guidance of a teacher and learn the subject, then in course of time, it becomes experimentally verified that it is the right method, it's the right way. So similarly, that awareness of consciousness or development of consciousness or uplifting ourselves in a higher domain of consciousness, or in simple words we can say, in order to make ourselves into a better person, we need the guidance of a qualified teacher. So it's all depending upon the qualified teacher's presence and acceptance of the teacher. Like, the teacher may be there, but if one is not interested to learn the subject, no one can help him.
Hello. So I am pretty young, relatively. So there's a...
Is that the statement about the rest of us? Or
It was just an observation about myself. And with my generation, right, we are quite connected to technology, as was mentioned, but also science. We believe in a very materialistic view of nature. We think there's a rational solution to everything. That's just the way we live our lives. We're very addicted to science in a sense. So I can explain intelligence as a connection of neurons. I can explain it as an accumulation of certain gray matter. I can explain the way my body works as a contraction of muscle fibers. And the real question is that, and even more so, the problems that we're trying to solve here, that were connected, that were addressed in this conversation about the environment, about leadership, are still very physical problems. They're still problems in this world. So the question is, what is the relevance of the soul? And why must we address it? Thank you.
Charles, do you want to answer that?
If I may just put a simple example. You being a young man today, and very soon you'll be head of the family. Right? Whenever the head moves, right, something moves the head. It's the neck. And every man in the family knows who is the neck. Likewise now, you're asking what's the purpose of the soul? Before the head, and this thing moves, the soul tells you what to do. The intensity, the movement. So you actually have to understand why. If you do not know where you're going, any road can take you there. Right? So most important, this is from our old storybook, Alice in Wonderland. So purpose of the soul, you have to understand yourself first. It's what dharma. And once you fully understand that, inner cooperation is what we call mission and vision. So once that is done, the rest will take its place. Okay?
Question there on the right. Oh, sorry. Please go ahead.
Hi, my name is Pratap Aditya. Just pranam to Maharaj. And Maharaj sir, just a small question to you. We are in a corporate world day to day, and it's a very much result and goal oriented. Whereas if you will go to Gita, we have to believe that karmanye vadhika ma phaleshu kadachane. So we should not wait for the result, just do your duty. So just give us some spiritual speech that how we will balance the both in the practical life. Thank you.
Thank you. You think that corporate world is a difficult area. Just consider where Krishna spoke Bhagavad Gita. In a battlefield. When the battle was just about to begin, he imparted the knowledge of Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna. And what is the essence of Krishna's teachings in Bhagavad Gita? I'll try to be brief. The first thing that Krishna establishes in Bhagavad Gita is that one's identity beyond his body as the soul. Right? Like, okay, I'll say the first consideration actually was Arjuna is giving various reasons why he should fight. And Krishna was just listening. But then eventually Arjuna submits to Krishna. That I'm completely bewildered. I do not know what to do. I'm surrendering myself to you. Please guide me. Please tell me what I should do. Then only Krishna started to speak. So point is, a teacher will teach, only the student is willing to learn. That's the first consideration. Then when Krishna started to speak, Krishna's first statement was, Arjuna, you're speaking like a wise man, but you don't have the knowledge. That means you're speaking like a wise man, but you're a fool. That's he pointed out. And then he's saying that you're lamenting over killing all your relatives and friends. But did you ever consider that no one ever dies? It's only a change of body. And they themselves brought themselves into this situation. You didn't want to fight. You have been forced to fight. So now you have to do your duty, as you were saying. You have to do your duty. You're a warrior. If you run away from the battlefield, it'll be the most heinous disgrace to you. So stand here and fight. So in this way, Krishna establishes the fact that one's identity is beyond this physical body, but his spiritual soul. That is the first one consideration. Then Krishna establishes himself as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. You see, when Krishna explained the characteristic of the soul, the nature of the soul. The soul is never born. The soul never dies. The soul cannot be burned by fire. Soul cannot be cut by any weapon. Soul cannot be dried by air or withered by air or drowned by water. The soul is beyond all these material conditions. The soul is eternal. The soul is immortal. And then he establishes the duty of an individual. As you mentioned, the karma yoga. One must act without desiring the result. The karma yoga means one acts on behalf of the Lord and offers the result of his actions to the Lord. So, after explaining that, Krishna says, Arjun, I gave this knowledge first to Vivaswan, the sun god. And then Vivaswan gave it to his son Manu. Then Manu gave it to his son Ikshaku. And in this way, through a disciplic succession of saintly kings, this knowledge has been flowing. But in course of time, this knowledge has been spoiled. That wisdom has been lost. Therefore, today I am re-establishing this knowledge through you, because you are my devotee and you are my friend. Now, consider, Krishna is Arjun's cousin, of the same age. Now, all of a sudden, his cousin is saying that, look, I gave this knowledge to Vivaswan, the sun god. So, Arjun's natural question is, query is, Krishna, you were born just the other day. And Vivaswan was born so many billions of years ago. So how can I understand, how can I accept that you imparted this knowledge to Vivaswan, son god? Then Krishna says, Arjun, Bahuni me vyatitani janmani tavachartina. Many, many times you have taken birth, so did I. But about those births, you don't remember anything, whereas I remember everything. So this is how Krishna is establishing his difference from us. And then Krishna is pointing out that Ajopi son of Bhayatma, although I am unborn, although I am the supreme proprietor and supreme controller, I don't need to take birth, but I appear here in this material world, taking advantage of my internal potency. Sambhavami Atma Mayaya. Atma Mayaya means internal potency. Sambhavami, not born. I manifest myself. Why? As you must know the verse, Yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata. Abhathanam adharmasya tadatmanam shijam. When there is an increase of religiosity and decline of religious principles, in order to re-establish the religious principles, I manifest myself. So in this way, you see, Krishna is establishing his identity as the Supreme Personality of God. And then going through different chapters of Bhagavad Gita, giving different instructions to Arjuna, Krishna is finally telling, surrender unto me. Sarva dharman parityajya mam ekam sharanam. So that is the final instruction of Bhagavad Gita. Surrender unto me, then I will take care of you in all respect. You are living with such anxiety, don't worry about it. When I am there, you surrender unto me. Just as the son surrenders unto a capable father, does the son have to worry about anything? No. Similarly, when we surrender unto our Supreme Father, who is the Supreme Proprietor, Supreme Controller, who is omnipotent and omniscient, why do we have to worry about anything? And this is how we can become totally free from all anxiety. And this also brings me to another point. In the corporate world, we are seeing how things are becoming degraded and we are in constant anxiety. Why? Because we can't really depend upon anybody. But if we know that there is somebody who is controlling everything, and if we can surrender unto him, all our anxieties will disappear.
Sorry, okay, thank you. Wonderful thoughts being exchanged. I'm really glad to be here. My name is Pankaj Chopra. I recently shifted here. There's a little bit of confusion which is going on in my mind also. There is, when you're younger, the what's the meaning of success. You know, you're told by your parents, friends, oh, you need to do well, study well, get a car, get a nice job, earn money and have a house, etc. That's success, materially. That's what's happening in various parts of the developed world, in the US. Many of my friends there done exceptionally well, materially very, very well. And I'm sure many of people here are successful. Now we talk about another aspect, which is, success is actually being conscious of, or becoming more spiritual. So we become, if you see, there are lots of Indians, and that's the part of the world that I'm from, and that's where all this seems to have originated, where Krishna gave said the various, explaining these thoughts and these pearls of wisdom. But where is success? How do you define that? Is it material success, or is it the spirituality which you should be defining or measuring, saying, oh, these are more successful people and these are not? I have seen people, and we know about very many of these countries where people have done materially very well. So are we to say that they are not successful because they're not spiritually there and they are lost in running after material desires? And to say that in where we are mostly from, India, that's most successful because we are talking about it. So if you would be very kind to explain what is the success as a person, as people, that would be very, very enlightening. Thank you.
Okay. I would also prefer that others also give their input, but I'll just briefly give an input in that. Like as you say, like when you are young, from your childhood, you have been motivated towards material success. And that's the unfortunate state of affairs in this world. There's hardly any spiritual awareness, even in India. We lost it. And thanks to the British rule over India for 400 years. Because they made us believe that whatever is Indian is bad, and whatever West is the best. Anyway, the point is that in India, as you yourself mentioned, the seat of spiritual wisdom is actually India. Now, as you were saying, what actually determines our actual success? I'll just give a small little example in that respect. Once Guru Nanak was invited by a very rich man. So Guru Nanak went there, and he noticed that in front of his house, there are so many flags hoisted on the mast. And so he inquired, what are these flags for? And he was told that each flag indicates so many gold coins that this person has accumulated. Like each flag indicates, say, 100 gold coins. So he didn't say anything. While leaving, Guru Nanak gave that man one needle and said, please keep it for me, I'll take it from you when I need it. So he said, when will you need it? He said, next life.